Hey guys, tonight you find yourself standing beneath the winter walls of Constantinople, with cold stone at your back, damp straw underfoot, smoke tucked high in the rafters of a gatehouse, and distant bells trembling through river mist. Mud clings to your boots, torchlight shivers on bronze fittings, and nearby horses breathe pale clouds into the darkening air. Medieval travel brochures really oversold this experience, assuming anyone here has both brochures and the courage to complain. You pull your cloak tighter, feeling the wool scratch your neck and the wind slide neatly through every gap it can find. A gentle reality check arrives with the smell of wet hay and old onions. You probably would not last a week out here, and that is before anyone asks you to rule an empire. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as the bells fade, you may leave a small note below telling where you're watching from and what the local time is beside your own quiet window. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand at the edge of the imperial quarter as dusk thickens over the city, and Constantinople seems less like a place than a great stone creature breathing smoke, incense, sea wind, and fear. Behind you, the streets twist down toward markets and workshops, where fishmongers pack away their trays, bakers rake ashes over their ovens, and boys with red hands carry bundles of firewood through alleys slick with evening mud. Ahead, the palace gates rise in layers of stone, bronze, and shadow, guarded by men whose cloaks are heavy with winter damp and whose spears catch the last grey light. You are wrapped in a fur-lined cloak that smells faintly of storage chests, lavender, and someone else's anxiety. It has been lent to you because a woman approaching the palace cannot look like a rain-soaked pilgrim, even if she feels exactly like one. A servant has already brushed the mud from your hem twice, with the grim patience of a man who knows the mud will return. Constantinople in winter has a talent for mud. It climbs the shoes, darkens the wool, settles in the wheel ruts, and waits beside every doorway like a small and loyal household pet. Somewhere near the gate, an actual dog begins following you. It is thin, yellow-eyed, and solemn, with one ear torn by old arguments. No one can quite agree whether palace dogs are lucky, unlucky, or simply better informed than courtiers, but this one seems to know that something important is happening. It trots beside your party as if it has been invited. The cart that brought your trunk stands crooked near a wall, one wheel cracked against a stone lip. A groom mutters that the axle gave a warning creak 3 streets ago, and the driver mutters back that carts, like husbands and tax collectors, always complain before doing their duty. In the fading light, you see your possessions being lifted down a cedar chest, a bundle of veils, a narrow box of combs, a packet of letters tied with faded thread, and a small travel icon wrapped in linen. You have carried that icon across muddy roads and cold ferry crossings, touching it before sleep because someone once swore that saints painted on wood can hear better at night. Even now, it is hard to tell whether comfort comes from heaven, habit, or simply having something familiar beneath your hand. The gatekeeper looks at you longer than politeness requires. His beard is silvered with frost, and his iron key ring hangs from his belt like a little prison of moons. Behind him, an official in a dark cloak reads your name from a wax tablet, though he already knows it. Everyone knows it now, or claims to. Names travel faster than horses in a city where ambition has good ears. A girl who was once kept warm by smoky hearths, old wool blankets, and the kindness of women in side chambers is now expected to become imperial, polished, remote, and almost holy. This is a difficult transformation to perform while your boots are wet. You lower your head as the first gate opens. The sound is not grand, It is heavy, slow, and rude, bronze scraping against stone as if the palace itself is reluctant to let you in. Torch smoke rolls outward, you step beneath the arch, and the temperature seems to drop at once. The stones hold cold the way old men hold grudges. Your fingers tighten inside your sleeves. Somewhere above, unseen watchers shift behind narrow openings. You feel their gaze before you see their faces. You've heard stories of empresses since childhood, of purple chambers and golden dishes, of women in pearls whose words could move armies. Those who tell the tale never fully agree on whether such women are blessed, trapped, feared, or merely better dressed than everyone else. Tonight, as you cross the threshold, you begin to suspect that all four may be true. Inside the first courtyard, the world widens, but not kindly. Lamps burn beneath covered walks. Servants move quickly with baskets of rushes, folded cloths, amphorae of oil, and trays covered in linen. A boy carries a bucket of sand for spilled wax. A woman with ink-dark eyebrows hurries past with a bundle of clean towels pressed to her chest. Near the wall, two men spread fresh rushes over a stone passage, sweeping away the old layer that has gathered crumbs, soot, damp, and the faint secrets of many feet. In lesser halls, rushes are often left too long and become a kingdom of smells. But here, in the imperial quarter, even decay is managed with ceremony. You're told to wait. That may be the first true lesson of the palace. You wait in the cold, beneath a painted arch where saints stare down with calm, almond-shaped eyes. You wait while a chamberlain checks a seal. You wait while your escort argues softly with another official whose hat is too tall to be entirely trusted. You wait while the yellow-eyed dog sits by your broken cartwheel outside the gate, watching as if taking notes for later. A servant brings you warmed wine in a small cup. It is spiced with something bitter and sweet. Perhaps cinnamon, perhaps cloves, perhaps a remedy against bad air, homesickness, and inconvenient thoughts. Some swear that a pinch of rue carried in the sleeve can guard against envy, and you notice one of the older women in your company touching her cuff again and again. In Constantinople, envy is treated almost like weather invisible, common, and capable of ruining a perfectly good day. The cup warms your palms, the rim is smooth, you drink carefully, because already you understand that nothing here is only itself. A cup is not just a cup, it is a sign that someone has acknowledged your arrival. A delay is not just a delay, it is a measurement of rank. A glance is not just a glance, it is a message folded smaller than parchment. At last, a bell sounds from somewhere within the palace grounds, lower than the monastery bells beyond the walls. The chamberlain straightens, the guards adjust their spears, your attendants gather round you, smoothing the cloak, checking the veil, tucking away one rebellious strand of hair as if it has committed treason. You walk forward over the fresh rushes, and the smell rises under your steps' cut stems. Damp stone, beeswax, smoke, wet wool. The palace glimmers ahead, not with simple brightness, but with hidden light gold caught in mosaics, flame trapped in glass lamps, polished marble holding the last bruised colour of the winter sky. It should feel magnificent. It does feel magnificent. But there is a terrible stillness inside the magnificence, a watchfulness that makes even beauty seem armed. You pass beneath another arch. A priest murmurs a blessing over you, so softly that the words vanish into his beard. A small relic case hangs from his neck, silver darkened by many hands. No one can quite agree whether the bone inside belongs to the saint named on the label, because labels are confident things and bones are quiet ones. Still, you bow your head. Doubt may be honest, but in the palace, reverence is safer. Your feet ache, your hands are cold, your mouth tastes of spiced wine and smoke. Somewhere behind you, the city continues its ordinary evening pottage stirred in clay pots, coarse bread broken on wooden boards, shutters barred against the wind, apprentices sleeping near warm ovens, sailors cursing softly by the harbour. That life, rough as it is, suddenly seems open and enormous compared with the polished paths ahead. You're led toward a chamber where candles have already been lit. Half of one candle has burned low, its wax bending like a tired neck. The flame trembles when you enter, and for a moment, everyone watches the little movement, as if even fire must learn how to behave near power. The crown is not yet on your head. The robes are not yet placed upon your shoulders. The titles have not yet settled around you like chains hidden under silk. But the first touch of Empress life is already here, cold marble beneath your soles, guarded doors behind you, watched corridors before you, and the quiet knowledge that from this night forward, almost nothing you do will belong only to you. The chamber receives you with a hush so complete that even your damp cloak seems embarrassed to drip. A servant kneels at once to unfasten it, and the smell of wet wool rises between you like a small, defeated weather system. The half-burned candle on the table bends lower, its wax pooling in a pewter dish, and beyond it a painted curtain stirs although no window is open. In the palace, drafts have the confidence of officials. They arrive without invitation and make themselves at home. You are not left alone. That is the next lesson. One woman takes your gloves, another smooths your sleeves. A young eunuch with careful hands sets your travel icon beside the candle, turning it so the painted saint faces east. Some swear that an icon turned the wrong way may invite confused dreams, and in a place like this, where dreams are sometimes repeated to priests and priests repeat them to men with seals, even sleep must be arranged properly. A bronze door stands ahead, dark as old honey, its surface beaten with crosses, vines, beasts, and saints whose eyes has been polished by centuries of touch. 2 guards pull it open, and its hinges groan with a slow, animal sound. You pass through, and the palace gathers around you. The corridor beyond is wide enough for a procession, yet it feels narrow because everyone knows exactly where you're supposed to step. Marble slabs run beneath your feet, patched in places where older stones have cracked. Lamps hang from chains overhead, their flames small and yellow, trembling inside glass cups. The air smells of beeswax, lamp oil, warm dust, and the faint sharpness of vinegar used by servants to scrub stains from stone. Somewhere nearby, a bucket is set down with a soft thud. Somewhere farther away, a door closes too quickly. You walk between walls that shine with mosaic. Gold tesserae catch the lamplight and scatter it into little broken suns. Christ, saints, emperors, angels, victories, and solemn women in jewelled robes watch you pass from 1,000 tiny squares. No one can quite agree whether the old artist meant these faces to comfort or warn those who moved beneath them. Tonight, they seem to do both. Their eyes are calm. That is not necessarily reassuring. A chamberlain leads the way. He carries an ivory staff, and his shoes make almost no sound. This, you decide, is suspicious. Any man whose shoes refuse to confess his movement has learned more than walking. He names each place in a low voice: a waiting hall, a reception court, a passage to the women's apartments, a smaller chapel, a vestibule where petitioners may stand on certain mornings if they have permission, patience, and feet strong enough for bureaucracy. He does not say prison. He does not need to. Behind a curtain of heavy silk, you hear voices stop when you approach. The silence that follows is softer than a whisper and much more informative. Curtains hang everywhere, dyed in deep blue, red, and green, some embroidered with vines, birds, and imperial symbols. They keep warmth in, conceal doors, divide halls, and allow half the palace to pretend it has not been listening to the other half. A curtain in a poor house may block a draught. A curtain here can block a future. Your hand brushes one as you pass. The silk feels cool, thick, almost oily. It costs more than many villages will see in a hungry year. Yet it is only another wall, softer than stone but no less complete. Beyond it, servants wait with basins, towels, folded linen, and little boxes of scented powder. One girl holds a tray of combs made from bone and polished wood. Another carries a clay brazier of coals to warm a side room, walking with tiny careful steps so the ash does not spill. In ordinary homes, people save embers under ash overnight, coaxing them awake before dawn like stubborn old relatives. Here, flame is carried from room to room by servants who never quite raise their eyes. You notice the floors. In the grandest chambers, marble is bare and cold. In lesser passages, rushes are scattered, fresher than those near the gate, mixed with lavender and bay leaves to sweeten the air. Some swear that bay keeps illness away, and others say it only makes illness smell more dignified. Either way, the crushed leaves release their scent beneath your shoes, and the palace covers its human odours with the confidence of a rich man covering debt with gold cloth. You are shown a room where you may rest, though rest is apparently a ceremonial word meaning to stand while people decide how soon you must move again. Oak doors seal it from the corridor. Iron keys turn. A brazier glows in one corner, and smoke escapes reluctantly through a vent above. Cushions line the wall. A low table holds coarse bread, figs, olives, a small dish of salt, and a cup of watered wine. It is simple food, almost kind, but you're too watched to eat freely. One of your attendants breaks the bread first and sets a piece aside near the icon, not as an offering exactly, more as an old habit folded into a new danger. Those who tell the tale never fully agree on which customs are holy, and which are just fear wearing its Sunday cloak. A senior woman enters without hurry. Her veil is dark, her expression smooth, and her hands are folded as neatly as a sealed letter. She greets you with words polished by long use. She says the palace rejoices at your arrival. She says the emperor has been informed. She says arrangements are being made. Each sentence has a roof and no door. You thank her, because gratitude is another garment you must learn to wear even when it fits badly. She explains the order of rooms as if describing the shape of your new life. Here you may receive certain visitors. There you may pray. Beyond that screen, your women may sleep. Through another passage lies a chapel for early services. The bronze doors are closed at night. The inner locks answer only to trusted officers. Messages go through approved hands. Food comes from appointed kitchens. Lamps are counted. Candles are recorded. Even the wax, it seems, has better documentation than most peasants. And slowly, with the brazier warming one side of your face and the cold floor numbing your toes, you understand the palace is not merely a house. It is a machine made from corridors, servants, curtains, keys, candles, habits, prayers, and fear. It shines. It breathes. It remembers who passed where, who spoke too long, who lowered her eyes, who failed to smile, who asked for extra wine, who touched which letter, who lingered near which door. Outside, perhaps, the yellow-eyed dog has curled beside the broken cartwheel. Beyond the walls, the city settles under smoke and bells. But here, behind bronze doors, luxury closes around you very gently, like a hand wearing silk. You do not sleep so much as sink for a little while into a shallow pool of warmth, with the brazier sighing in the corner and the half-burned candle making a small golden cave around the travel icon. Then a bell sounds somewhere beyond the doors. It is not loud, but it has authority. Another bell answers farther away, and then footsteps gather in the corridor like rain beginning on roof tiles. Your eyes open to dimness, smoke, and the smell of wool blankets. For one merciful breath, you forget where you are. Then the oak door creaks, the iron key turns, and the palace remembers for you. Women enter carrying folded cloth, little jars, combs, pins, veils, belts, and boxes lined with linen. A young servant sets down a basin of warm water scented with rose leaves. Though the water has already begun to cool by the time it reaches your hands, that is a common truth of grand houses. The more people required to bring comfort, the more chances comfort has to lose its warmth along the way. Still, you dip your fingers in, and the rose scent rises gently, mixing with lamp oil and the stale night air. The senior woman from the evening before stands near the wall, watching with a face composed like a well-written prayer. She says the court must see you prepared, not merely dressed, prepared. The word has a sharper edge. A village girl dresses to keep out cold. A merchant's wife dresses to show prosperity. A nun dresses to vanish into service. But an empress is dressed like a message, and every fold of cloth must say what others have decided she means. Your old garments are removed piece by piece. The travel-stained wool, the damp hem, the cloak that smelled of storage chests and weather, all of it disappears into the hands of servants. You stand in your shift, chilled despite the brazier, while one woman rubs your arms briskly with linen and another combs your hair until your scalp prickles. Some swear that combing out the hair before court untangles not only knots, but ill fortune gathered during travel. No one can quite agree whether this is wisdom, superstition, or simply something said by women who have had to pull a comb through winter hair without being cursed for it. A little jar is opened. Perfume touches your wrists, your throat, the edges of your hair. It smells of rose, myrrh, and something darkly sweet. Perhaps storax, perhaps amber, perhaps the price of 3 goats in a village that would rather have kept the goats. The scent is beautiful, but it is not yours. It settles over you like another instruction. Then comes the first robe. It is silk, deep and heavy, gleaming when the lamp flame catches it. From afar, it would look soft as water. Up close, it has weight. It slides over your shoulders, cool at first, then close, then surprisingly stubborn. The women pull it down, smooth it, tug it straight. A belt follows, stiff with embroidery and little metal plaques. It sits against your ribs and quietly explains that breathing is now a negotiated privilege. You try not to shift. A second layer is added. This one is patterned with small golden shapes. Vines and birds worked into the cloth so finely that the fabric seems to have trapped a garden and flattened it. The sleeves are narrow, then wider near the wrist, so that every motion becomes visible. Raise your hand too fast, and the silk whispers. Turn too sharply, and the belt complains. You understand at once that clothing can be a guard without carrying a spear. The women arrange your hair beneath a veil. Pins press close to your scalp. A band of pearls settles across your brow, colder than the morning basin. The pearls are not large, but there are many of them, each one pale and round as a frozen tear. One attendant murmurs that pearls protect modesty and calm the blood. Another quietly says they are unlucky if worn before certain feast days. The senior woman hears both and says nothing, which is often the palace way of disagreeing with everyone equally. Your travel icon watches from the table. Its painted saint seems almost amused. A small mirror of polished metal is brought to you. The face inside it is dim, warped, and golden around the edges. You see yourself and not yourself. Your cheeks have been touched with a faint colour made from ground root and oil. Your eyes look larger beneath the veil. The robe broadens your shape and narrows your choices. You look solemn, expensive, and faintly trapped. This, apparently, is success. Outside the chamber, servants move fresh rushes along the passage. Their straw baskets scrape softly against the floor. You hear someone coughing behind a curtain, then being hushed. The palace wakes around you in layers, kitchens heating bread, scribes trimming pens, guards changing watch, priests clearing their throats for prayer, laundresses lifting damp linen from wooden tubs, and somewhere far beyond, the city's market sellers beginning the old morning argument with cold, price, and hunger. A tray is set before you, a little bread soaked in watered wine, figs, and a pinch of salt. You are encouraged to eat. Encouraged, in the palace, means required by people who will later discuss whether you did it gracefully. You lift a piece of bread, aware of sleeves, veil, belt, pearls, servants, and the senior woman's calm eyes. Crumbs become enemies. Wine becomes a hazard. Even swallowing feels like something that might be reported inaccurately by noon. A dry thought crosses your mind. If ruling the world requires this many pins, perhaps the world deserves to remain difficult. When you stand, the robe drags slightly behind you. 2 attendants adjust it at once. Another checks the veil. Another lifts a jewel on your shoulder so it lies at the proper angle. You are told that the court loves dignity. The court loves reverence. The court loves a woman who appears serene. You're not told that serenity is easier when your ribs are not being politely compressed by imperial embroidery. The bronze doors open. You step into the corridor, and the cold marble receives you through the soles of your shoes. Lamps glow low in their glass cups. The gold mosaics brighten as you pass, throwing small fragments of light across your veil. The suspiciously silent chamberlain waits with his ivory staff. He bows just enough, not too deeply. Nothing in the palace is wasted, not even the angle of a spine. As you move forward, the robe teaches you its pace. You cannot hurry, you cannot stride, you must glide, which is walking after ambition has removed the knees. The women behind you match your rhythm, the silk curtains stir. A eunuch opens the next door. Somewhere in the wall, unseen listeners may or may not be waiting, even now. It is hard to tell whether the palace has ears, or whether everyone inside it simply behaves as if it does, which amounts to the same thing. By the time you reach the outer hall, you're warm under the layers but cold in the hands. The perfume clings to you. The pearls press lightly against your brow. The belt holds you upright when courage might prefer to sit down, and you understand, with a slow inward sigh, that imperial beauty is not freedom made visible. It is discipline embroidered so finely that people mistake it for grace. The outer hall opens before you with a glow that seems almost warm until you step into it and remember marble is loyal to winter. The lamps burn in bronze stands. Beeswax candles shiver beside painted columns, and the floor has been swept so thoroughly that even the rushes look nervous. You move at the pace your robe allows, pearls cool on your brow, belt firm at your ribs, perfume rising whenever the silk shifts. The chamberlain glides ahead with his ivory staff, and the women behind you follow so softly that you begin to wonder whether anyone in the palace is permitted to make honest noise. At the far end, a set of doors stands open to the dining hall. The smell reaches you first roasted fish, warm bread, vinegar, herbs, honeyed wine, lamp smoke, and the faint damp scent of many wool cloaks drying near walls. It should be comforting. In a village hall or monastery guest house, such smells might mean shelter, a wooden bowl of pottage, a bench near the fire, and someone's aunt insisting you eat more because you look like a famine with shoes. Here, every cent feels weighed, recorded, and assigned a rank. You enter. The imperial table is arranged with terrible care. Not terrible because it is ugly. It is beautiful, painfully so. Cloths lie smooth as still water. Silver dishes catch candlelight. Bread rests on fine trenchers, cut in neat portions. Cups stand ready, polished until they reflect little bent versions of the room. Servants wait behind them with lowered eyes, and court officials stand in ordered groups like pieces on a board game no one explains before you lose. You're shown where to sit. That, too, is a lesson. Your place is not simply near the emperor, not simply beside this noble or across from that churchman. It is a statement. Too close, and someone may say you're being raised too high too quickly, too far, and someone may whisper that you have not truly been accepted. No one can quite agree whether seating at court is politics disguised as furniture or furniture disguised as politics. But either way, the bench beneath you feels less like wood than judgment. You lower yourself carefully. The robe resists. The belt tightens. Your sleeves behave like two decorated animals that must be guided into place. An attendant adjusts one fold before it touches a dish, saving the empire from the scandal of silk near source. You sit upright, hands calm, face serene. Inside, you're mostly wondering how anyone eats while wearing enough fabric to shelter a small parish. The emperor has not yet spoken to you. He sits beneath a lamp whose chain glitters with little links of gold. His face is composed, his beard dark, his eyes tired in a way that power does not cure. Around him gather men with soft hands, hard voices, and rings that knock lightly against their cups. Priests sit near the upper end, their black garments making quiet pools among the coloured silks. A few women are visible behind screens, their eyes bright through carved openings. You feel the whole room notice the exact angle of your chin. The meal begins with prayer. A deacon chants softly, and the sound travels upward into the rafters, where smoke has darkened the beams. You bow your head. On the table, a small dish of salt gleams. Salt is treated with great respect, as if it knows secrets. Some swear that spilling it invites quarrels before nightfall, and a servant hovers near the dish with the haunted focus of a man assigned to prevent both mess and destiny. You decide at once not to touch it unless commanded by an angel. Bread is offered first. A servant breaks it, but another tastes before any piece reaches you. The motion is subtle, practiced, almost graceful. It is also impossible to miss. Every bite at the imperial table travels through suspicion before it reaches the mouth. Fish follows, delicate and white, dressed with oil and herbs. There are olives, leeks, lentils softened with onions, smoked fish from farther coasts, and small pastries glazed with honey. In another life, eaten by a hearth with cold hands thawing around a wooden bowl, this food might feel like mercy. Here, it feels like an examination. You take a bite of bread, not too quickly, because hunger is common, not too slowly, because disdain is dangerous. You chew with your eyes lowered, then lift them at the proper moment. The room continues speaking in low streams around you. A courtier mentions a tax shipment delayed by weather. Another laughs lightly at something that may not be funny. A priest remarks upon a saint's feast. A general with weathered hands says little, which makes everyone listen harder. A cup is placed before you. The wine is watered, spiced, and warmed. You lift it carefully, remembering the pearls, the sleeves, the watching faces. A sip too deep may look coarse. A sip too small may suggest fear. Refusing may seem proud. Accepting may seem eager. You begin to understand that the terrible part of being an empress is not only danger, childbirth, exile, or the possibility that your relatives will become political furniture. It is that ordinary acts, eating bread, drinking wine, breathing at the wrong time, stop being ordinary. Across the table, an older official studies you over the rim of his cup. His eyes are pale and patient. He smiles when you notice him, and you smile back with the careful warmth of someone approaching a strange dog that might own property. The yellow-eyed dog from the gate would be easier company. At least if it disliked you, it would have the decency to growl. A dish of pottage is brought, thick with beans and herbs. This comforts you more than the silver plates, because pottage belongs to the wider world. Soldiers eat it, widows stretch it, monks bless it. Peasants improve it by imagining meat nearby. Steam rises from the bowl, softening the air before your face. You lift the spoon. The taste is plain, earthy, and almost honest. For a moment, beneath the candles and mosaics, you remember roadside fires, coarse bread, and the broken cartwheel near the gate. Then someone at the table mentions your family. The words are mild, too mild. A question about your father's household, a compliment regarding an uncle, a gentle observation about loyalty in difficult times. The emperor's gaze remains on his cup. The chamberlain's face does not move. You answer with gratitude, modesty, and almost no information. You praise old kindnesses. You mention prayers. You say nothing that can be sharpened later. Those who tell the tale never fully agree on whether court conversation is an art, a trap, or a form of indoor hunting. Tonight it feels like all three, conducted over lentils. The meal continues. Servants replace dishes with silent precision. Crumbs are brushed away before they can develop opinions. A napkin is offered. A basin appears for rinsing fingertips, the water scented faintly with herbs. In many households, hands are wiped on tunics, aprons, or whatever child is standing too close. Here, fingers are washed as if each one holds a treaty. You watch how others eat. The priest touches little. The general drinks more than he eats. The older official speaks only after others have shown their positions. A young courtier laughs too brightly, and you see two men exchange a glance so quick it might have been a candle flicker. Even laughter has a price here. Too much, and one seems foolish. Too little, and one seems severe. A woman behind the screen whispers, and the whisper travels through the room like a mouse through rushes. By the final course, honeyed fruit and little cakes, your shoulders ache from stillness. The robe is warm now, heavy with your own heat. The pearls press familiar circles against your skin. You have eaten enough not to insult the kitchen, and little enough not to seem greedy. This, you're told by the senior woman's approving silence, may be considered a victory. When the emperor finally turns to you, his words are courteous, brief, and public. He hopes the palace has received you well. You bow your head and say that every honour has been shown. It is true, in the way palace truths are true, polished, guarded, and missing several doors. The candles burn lower. Wax leans into silver cups. Beyond the shutters, winter wind moves along the walls of Constantinople. Somewhere far off, monastery bells mark the hour for men sleeping under wool blankets, for sailors by the harbour, for market women counting coins, for the yellow-eyed dog perhaps nosing beneath the broken cart for scraps. You sit at the table of eyes, warm, perfumed, jewelled, and watched, and you understand that luxury has not fed you. It has studied you. The bells come before light. They roll through the palace while the candles still burn low, before the kitchens fully wake, before the courtyard stones turn grey, before the city below remembers its own noise. One bell sounds near, deep and round. Then another answers from a chapel hidden somewhere inside the imperial maze, and beyond that, softer still. Monastery bells drift over Constantinople like bronze birds in the mist. You wake beneath wool blankets that have gathered the night's damp at the edges. With the taste of spiced wine still faint in your mouth, and the memory of too many watching eyes resting behind your lids. For one slow moment, you lie still. The chamber is dim. The brazier has fallen into red-hearted coals. The half-burned candle beside your travel icon has finally collapsed into a small lake of wax, its wick curled like a sleeping insect. The painted saint looks back at you through the weak flame of a fresh taper, because someone has already entered while you slept and replaced the light. That is another palace lesson. Even darkness is supervised. A servant touches your sleeve. Gently, still, your heart jumps. "It is time for prayer," she whispers. In an ordinary house, dawn may begin with coughing, a baby crying, a rooster making grand announcements about a son it did not personally arrange, and someone fumbling for yesterday's embers beneath ash. Here, dawn begins with keys, veils, basins, and footsteps soft as falling flour. Warm water arrives, not quite warm enough. A linen towel touches your hands. Your hair is smoothed. A veil is pinned more simply than yesterday's court arrangement. Though simple in the palace still involves enough fabric to worry a tailor. You are dressed in darker silk for the chapel, with a fur-lined mantle laid over your shoulders. Your fingers are cold, and you curl them once beneath the cloth before remembering that visible discomfort is another little crumb for the palace to gather. Outside the room, the corridor breathes with lamp smoke and bay leaves crushed into fresh rushes. Somewhere a sleepy servant stumbles, catches a tray, and is hissed at by someone with more rank and less mercy. Even imperial holiness, you discover, depends on people who have not had enough sleep. You walk behind a priest carrying a small lamp. The flame leans and trembles in the draught. Ahead of you, the chamberlain with the ivory staff moves in his silent, suspicious way, as if the marble has agreed to keep his secrets. You pass closed doors, curtained alcoves, and mosaic saints whose gold faces gather dawn before the sky does. A eunuch unlocks a bronze grill. Another servant lifts a curtain embroidered with crosses. The air grows cooler. The chapel waits under a low blue darkness. It is smaller than the great churches of the city, but it feels heavy with attention. Icons glow along the walls, their painted eyes dark and steady. Beeswax candles stand before them in rows, some straight, some bent, some already weeping. The smell is thick wax, incense, cold stone, old wood, wool damp from night air, and the faint medicinal bitterness of herbs carried in someone's sleeve. Some swear that a sprig of basil kept near an icon pleases holy powers and discourages fever. No one can quite agree whether it works, but no one seems eager to test the morning without it. You take your place behind a screen, not fully hidden, not fully seen. This is becoming familiar. Palace life is made of such halfway states. You're present enough to be judged, veiled enough to be symbolic, near enough to be useful, distant enough to be blamed later by people who never stood in the cold chapel before dawn. The chanting begins. The priest's voice is low, then joined by others, rough with sleep yet practiced into smoothness. The words rise and fold over themselves, Greek syllables moving like water over stone. You do not need to understand every word to feel their rhythm pass through your ribs. A censer swings. Smoke spills upward in silver threads, softening the icons, blurring the candle flames, making the chapel seem less built than dreamed. You bow when others bow. You cross yourself when others do. Your body learns the pattern quickly, because the palace rewards bodies that move before minds complain. A relic is brought out in a little case of silver and glass. Everyone leans inward without appearing to lean. The priest holds it carefully, wrapped in a cloth, and another priest murmurs the saint's name. It may be a finger bone. It may be a splinter from a holy place. It may be something older, stranger, and less certain than the label claims. Those who tell the tale never fully agree on the contents of relic cases, but they agree that doubt should keep its voice low when silver is involved. You kiss the case when it reaches you. The metal is cold, the glass tastes faintly of wax, hands, and winter. You lower your eyes, and the senior woman behind you exhales softly, approving the correct measure of reverence. Not too dramatic, not too brief. Even devotion, here, has manners. The prayers continue until your knees begin to ache. Your robe presses against the backs of your legs. The mantle warms your shoulders but not your feet. Somewhere outside the chapel wall, the city begins to stir. You can almost hear it beneath the chant mule bells, cartwheels, shutters opening, market tolls being argued over, fishermen unloading baskets slick with scales, a baker slapping dough against a board. Ordinary people must pray too, of course. But many of them do it while trying not to burn porridge. Their holiness has steam in it, and crumbs, and children asking where their shoes have gone. Your holiness now must be displayed. You are expected to sponsor lamps, kiss icons, honour feast days, listen to priests, receive petitions from holy houses, send cloth to shrines, and appear as if your soul is a polished window through which the empire may glimpse heaven. If rain ruins the grain, some will say more prayers are needed. If plague creeps through a district, someone will ask which sin has angered which saint. If the emperor wins a battle, thanksgiving must shine through you. If he loses, your silence may be measured for cracks. A monk steps forward after the service, thin as a quill, with eyebrows like two tired ravens. You have not seen him before, though in the palace one often feels one has seen everyone before in some warning dream. He bows and offers a small thread bracelet, knotted around a tiny bead touched, he claims, to a saint's tomb beyond the city. Some swear such knots guard women from the evil eye. Even now, it is hard to tell whether the bracelet is blessing politics, or a monk's quiet attempt to be remembered by the right people. You accept it. The bead is plain, dark, and warm from his fingers. For some reason, it comforts you more than the jeweled pearls did. You hide it beneath your sleeve. After prayer, you are led to a narrow side chamber where a small meal waits coarse bread, soft cheese, olives, watered wine, and a spoonful of honey so golden it catches the candlelight. You eat standing near a shuttered window, hearing rain begin to tap against wood. The senior woman reminds you gently that later there will be offerings to approve, names of monasteries to hear, and a procession route to consider for an approaching feast. Your day, it seems, belongs to saints before it belongs to you. You look toward the travel icon now carried by a servant in a cloth wrap, ready to be set wherever you are expected to pray next. The painted saint has crossed muddy roads with you, watched the broken cartwheel, survived the gatehouse smoke, and now enters imperial devotion like a small witness no one has yet managed to control. The bells fade at last, but they leave their shape inside the air. You walk back through the corridor as dawn finally touches the palace roofs. Your silk whispers, your sleeve hides the monk's knotted bead, your stomach holds bread, cheese, and unease. Behind you, candle smoke curls before the icons. Ahead, the palace waits with its doors, meals, whispers, and bright cold stones. And you begin to understand that an empress does not merely live beneath a crown. She must pray beneath it, kneel beneath it, wake before light beneath it, and appear grateful when the bells pull her from sleep. By the time the rain settles into a fine silver tapping along the shutters, the palace has already carried you from prayer into duty, from duty into waiting, and from waiting into another chamber where the air is warmer than comfort requires. The room lies deeper in the women's apartments, away from the larger halls and colder corridors, with carpets laid over stone and rushes tucked along the edges to swallow draughts. A brazier glows in the corner. Beeswax candles stand before a small icon of the mother and child, their flames wavering whenever someone lifts the curtain. The smell here is different from chapel incense or dining hall fish. It is wool, herbs, warm linen, old wood, rose water, and the faint sourness of fear kept politely covered. You know why you have been brought here before anyone says it. The women speak softly, but their eyes do not. They glance at your hands, your waist, your face, the way you sit, the way you rise, the small shadows beneath your eyes after the bells before dawn. In the purple-born chambers of the palace, a woman's body is watched like weather over a harvest. Everyone hopes for signs. Everyone fears signs. Everyone pretends this is reverence. A midwife comes forward, older than most of the court women, with sleeves rolled above strong wrists and a linen coif tied firmly under her chin. She does not look jewelled, learned, or afraid. This immediately makes her the most impressive person in the room. She bows, but not too low, because women who have delivered half the city's noble infants do not bend like reeds for anyone. Her hands smell of lavender, oil, and fennel seed. Some swear that fennel strengthens milk, eases the belly, and persuades stubborn infants to behave like reasonable citizens, which is charming optimism from people who have met neither infants nor citizens. She asks after your sleep, your appetite, the warmth of your feet, the timing of your courses, the heaviness in your limbs, and whether dreams have troubled you. Dreams matter here. A woman who dreams of clear water may be promised an easy birth, or so an attendant murmurs. A woman who dreams of broken teeth may be warned to pray harder. No one can quite agree whether dreams come from saints, supper, or the draught under the door. But everyone listens as if empire itself may arrive wrapped in a symbol. You answer carefully. The senior woman sits nearby with embroidery in her lap. Though her needle does not move, she is listening. Two younger attendants fold swaddling cloths into a carved chest. The cloths are fine linen, softer than anything a village newborn will feel, washed in scented water and dried near a guarded hearth. Beside them lie little bands, caps, and tiny garments edged with silk. They look impossibly small. They also look like documents. Each fold says heir, alliance, dynasty, survival. The midwife warms her hands near the brazier before touching your wrist. Her fingers press lightly, counting the pulse. Around her neck hangs a little pouch. Perhaps it holds herbs, perhaps a charm, perhaps both, because the sensible medieval household rarely wastes time separating medicine from hope. Some swear that a bit of coral tied near a cradle wards away the evil eye. Others prefer a written prayer, folded small and sewn into cloth, even now. It is hard to tell whether such things protect the child, soothe the mother, or give terrified families something useful to do with their hands. You look toward the icon. Candlelight trembles over the painted child's face. There are no children in the room, not yet, only the heavy expectation of them. It presses more tightly than yesterday's belt. You have learned that an empress is praised for beauty, modesty, patience, devotion, and grace. But beneath those softer words runs the harder one air. Without a son, she is pitied, blamed, replaced in whispers before any decree is signed. With a son, she is valuable, watched even more closely, and perhaps hated by those whose plans shrink around the cradle. A daughter may still be precious, still marriageable, still woven into treaties like bright thread, but the court's sigh will be measured, and everyone will pretend not to hear it. The midwife asks if you understand the customs of the Purple Chamber. Of course, you have heard them. Stories travel where women do. Children born within certain palace rooms are said to carry a special glow of legitimacy. Purple not merely in cloth, but in blood and memory. The walls themselves seem to know it. The chamber nearby, the one everyone speaks of with lowered voices, is lined with rich stone and old prestige, as if birth can be made more imperial by surrounding pain with expensive colour. Those who tell the tale never fully agree on how much holiness lives in purple stone, but the courtiers agree it is useful, and that is often more powerful. You are shown a cradle. It stands empty near the wall, carved from dark wood, its sides polished by generations of careful hands. A little silver cross hangs above it. Beside it, a bowl of clean water waits under a cloth. There are bundles of dried herbs rue, mint, pennyroyal, sage, and lavender. A clay jar of oil sits near folded towels. On a shelf, you see beeswax, thread, a little knife, a comb, a spoon, and a narrow strip of parchment covered in tiny writing. A charm, a prayer, a physician's note, in the palace. Even objects seem to have several loyalties. The midwife notices your glance and says the parchment bears holy words for protection. She says this plainly, as if discussing the weather. Then she tells a servant to move the jar away from the draught because cold oil is no kindness to anyone. This comforts you. A woman who respects both scripture and temperature may be trusted more than most officials. A wet nurse is brought in later, not close, not yet formally chosen, but displayed the way one might inspect a strong horse or a bolt of good cloth. She's broad-faced, calm, and cleanly dressed, with red hands from washing and a gaze lowered in practiced humility. Her own infant, somewhere beyond these walls, has loaned her body a value the palace now wishes to measure. Your throat tightens slightly. In farms and towns, women share milk when need demands it, when illness comes, when labour calls one mother away, when death leaves a cradle crying. Here, milk is policy. Even tenderness must pass through rank. The senior woman explains that the health of a nurse matters, her diet matters, her temper matters, her dreams may matter, and her family certainly matters. Too much garlic, some say, heats the milk. Too much grief sours it. A cheerful song before nursing may calm a child. A jealous glance may do the opposite. No one can quite agree, but the rules multiply anyway, because fear is a very productive scribe. You sit still while they speak of your future body in the third person. They speak of rest, diet, baths, prayers, physicians, auspicious days, relics to touch, saints to invoke, foods to avoid, rooms to warm, windows to seal, and which women may stand nearest if labour comes. You are present, breathing, listening, your hands folded over the monk's knotted bead hidden beneath your sleeve. Yet you feel, for a long moment, less like yourself than like a guarded field from which the empire expects a harvest. Outside the shutter, rain softens the city. Somewhere beyond palace walls, women carry water, knead bread, stir pottage, mend wool, scold goats, and give birth in rooms where smoke stains the rafters and the midwife may be paid in eggs, cloth, or gratitude. Their danger is no less real for being less jewelled, but no crowd waits to interpret the shape of their silence. No faction weighs their cradle against a throne. The midwife finally releases your wrist. She tells you to keep warm, eat gently, sleep when permitted, and avoid fright. This last instruction is delivered in the imperial palace, which makes it almost comic. Avoid fright. Here, where bronze doors groan at night, curtains listen, officials smile like knives wrapped in velvet, and every candle seems to report upward. Still, you nod. The candles burn lower before the icon. The empty cradle waits. The rain continues its soft, patient tapping. And as you're led back through the women's corridor, silk brushing the rushes, the hidden bead warm against your skin, you understand that the purple life is not only a crown, a table, a chapel, or a guarded door. It is also this quiet room of linen and herbs, where hope smells like lavender, fear wears clean sleeves, and your own flesh is treated as the Empire's most delicate, most dangerous possession. You return from the purple nursery with the smell of lavender still clinging to your sleeves and the sound of rain tapping behind your thoughts. The corridor outside the women's chambers feels softer than the grand halls, though not kinder. Carpets cover the coldest stones. Rushes are tucked along the edges, and curtains hang so heavily that the walls seem wrapped for winter. Yet every softened surface hides another listener, another servant, another pair of eyes lowered just far enough to be proper and raised just far enough to be useful. You are guided into a long room warmed by 2 braziers and crowded with quiet industry. Women sit near the light with embroidery frames balanced on their knees. Attendants sort linen. A girl grinds dried herbs with a little stone pestle, releasing sharp scents of sage, mint, and rue into the air. A eunuch stands near the door with a tablet, waiting to carry messages approved by someone who approves such things. Beyond a carved screen, voices murmur, pause, then resume more softly when you enter. No one is alone here. That is the strange misery of it. In a peasant cottage, privacy is rare because the room is small, the fire is shared, and someone is always stepping over someone else's sleeping feet. In a palace, privacy is rare because your life has become valuable property, and therefore must be guarded, witnessed, corrected, and repeated. The result is oddly similar, except with more silk and fewer chickens. You sit near the brazier, and one of the younger women brings you a cushion. Another places a low table beside you with bread, figs, watered wine, and a little bowl of almonds. A third kneels to adjust the hem of your robe before the fabric can rest too close to the coals. All of this happens so quickly that you barely have time to decide whether you wanted comfort. It is supplied before desire can form. The senior woman takes up her embroidery at last. Her needle moves through dark cloth with tiny flashes of silver thread. She's making a border of vines, or perhaps waves, or perhaps the kind of pattern that lets a woman listen while pretending to concentrate. Around her, the ladies speak of safe topics: first weather, feast days, the cost of good wax, the quality of linen from a certain merchant, the foolishness of a laundress who dried veils too near smoke. Then, slowly, like mice testing a floor, the talk moves toward names. A cousin has arrived from the provinces. A general's wife has sent a gift. A bishop has been ill, though some say he is only avoiding a difficult council. A noblewoman has taken to wearing a relic sewn into her sleeve, and no one can quite agree whether she does this from devotion, vanity, or fear of her mother-in-law, which may be the most practical reason of all. You listen. You smile when others smile. You let your hands rest calmly in your lap, though the monk's knotted bead presses beneath your sleeve like a secret pulse. The women notice everything. They notice which names make your eyes shift, which news makes you breathe too slowly, which joke you understand before others explain it. Palace gossip is not idle chatter. It is a loom, and every word is a thread. An attendant offers you an embroidery frame. You accept because refusing might seem proud, and because your hands need somewhere to put themselves. The cloth is stretched tight, marked with a pattern of small birds among leaves. You are given silk thread the colour of deep wine. You push the needle through. It catches. The woman beside you quietly shows the better angle, saving your dignity with a kindness so practised it may also be surveillance. Some swear that embroidery calms women's humours, steadies the thoughts, and keeps the tongue from dangerous wandering. Even now, it is hard to tell whether the cloth cures anxiety or merely gives anxiety something decorative to do. Still, stitch by stitch, the room settles. The braziers glow. Rain whispers beyond the shutters. The bells that woke you before dawn seem far away now, folded into the soft scrape of thread through linen. A physician arrives after midday, announced not with grandeur but with the brisk discomfort that follows men entering women's rooms, where they know they are both necessary and unwelcome. He wears a dark robe and carries a small leather case. His beard is trimmed carefully, his fingers stained faintly from herbs and ink. He bows, asks after your sleep, your digestion, the warmth of your hands, and whether the morning chapel smoke troubled your chest. You answer again. He opens his case and shows little packets powdered mastic, dried chamomile, fennel, rose petals, and something bitter for the stomach. There is a tiny glass cup for examining urine, because physicians are very fond of learning secrets from liquids while pretending this is dignified. He speaks of balance, heat, cold, dryness, dampness, food, rest, and prayer. A palace woman nearby whispers that leeches cured her aunt's headaches. Another swears they made her cousin faint into a soup pot. Those who tell the tale never fully agree on whether leeches are medicine, punishment, or small black monks with poor manners. The physician recommends warm foods, gentle walking, and less worry. This last advice is received with polite silence. Less worry in the imperial palace is like less smoke in a charcoal burner's hut. Admirable, unlikely, and best not said too confidently. After he leaves, the women loosen again. One tells a story of an empress long ago who kept a pet bird that repeated the names of men who visited her chamber. Another says the tale is nonsense, invented by monks who disliked clever women and talkative birds. No one can quite agree whether the bird existed, but everyone agrees that if it did, it should never have been allowed near officials. Laughter moves through the room, soft and careful. For a moment, you almost feel warmed by it. These women know the shape of confinement. They know how to hide fatigue beneath jewels, how to trade warning through compliments, how to make a gift carry apology, insult, alliance, and recipe all at once. One shows you a little packet of dried violets tucked in her sleeve for headaches. Another keeps a charm against envy wrapped in linen with a pilgrim badge from a distant shrine. A third claims that sleeping with an iron key beneath the pillow keeps nightmares away, though she admits it mostly bruises the shoulder. The eunuch by the door receives a sealed note and leaves without sound. His absence changes the room. Not much, just enough. A whisper sharpens near the screen. Someone mentions the older official from last night's table, the one with pale eyes and a smile too smooth to trust. Someone else mentions that he's been asking which servants came with you from your household. The senior woman's needle pauses for half a breath, then continues. You feel the thread between your fingers tighten. You are never alone, yet loneliness opens around you like a courtyard at night. By evening, the rain has stopped. A servant lights fresh candles, and the smell of beeswax rises clean and golden. Your travel icon is placed near the wall, the painted saint watching over bowls of thread, herb packets, folded linen, and women who survive by hearing more than they say. Outside, somewhere beyond the palace gates, the yellow-eyed dog may still be nosing along the broken cartwheel, free to follow whatever scent it chooses. You, meanwhile, sit behind screens with warm hands, guarded doors, and silk thread caught around your finger. You're surrounded by voices, attended by many, touched by careful hands, and still you feel the first deep truth of these chambers. A palace can crowd every room and still leave one person terribly alone. By the time morning returns, the rain has washed the palace roofs clean and left the courtyards shining like dark metal. The bells wake you again before the sky has fully opened, though this time their sound feels less like a summons to holiness and more like a hand turning the great wheel of the day. You rise beneath wool blankets, with the monk's knotted bead still tucked near your wrist, and for a moment you listen to the palace breathing awake keys in locks, sandals on stone, a cough behind a curtain, the soft thump of rushes shaken from baskets, the distant bark of some dog outside the walls. You think of the yellow-eyed one by the broken cartwheel and hope, foolishly, that it has found breakfast. In a city where emperors worry about armies and priests worry about souls, it is strangely easy to become concerned for a dog with bad manners and good instincts. The women dress you not in the heavy ceremonial splendor of the dining hall, but in public silk, which is a different trap with brighter edges. Your veil is arranged to frame your face. A mantle is fastened with small jeweled clasps. Perfume touches your sleeves. The senior woman studies you and says the people must see grace. She does not say fearlessness, because that would be too honest. She does not say obedience, because that would be too plain. Grace is the word chosen when no one wishes to mention how many guards will walk nearby. You are to be taken toward the hippodrome. The name itself moves through the chamber like a draught. The women pause over their work. One attendant crosses herself quickly, then pretends she has only adjusted her sleeve. The hippodrome is not merely a place for races. Although the races are famous enough horses pounding the track, charioteers standing like carved saints in motion, dust rising, men shouting themselves hoarse over colours. It is also where the city gathers its many throats into one voice. Praise can rise there, so can anger. No one can quite agree whether the crowd loves an emperor, judges him, threatens him, or simply enjoys being large enough to frighten marble. You leave the women's rooms by a guarded passage. The palace smells of morning bread, wet stone, vinegar, and beeswax. Servants hurry with trays covered in linen. A boy carries a bundle of laurel branches, perhaps for decoration, perhaps because someone important has decided green leaves make power look fresher. In the kitchens you pass near enough to hear knives chopping leeks and onions, the scrape of pots, and a cook scolding someone over burnt honey. Even imperial spectacle, you learn, begins with people trying not to ruin breakfast. At a side gate, attendants arrange your party, guards first, then officials, then women, then you beneath a canopy that shades you more from public curiosity than from weather. The street beyond the palace opens into noise. Constantinople has fully woken. Merchants shout beside stalls of figs, fish, coarse bread, oil, and little clay lamps. A seller of pilgrim badges holds up tin shapes stamped with saints and shrines, promising blessings at a price small enough to tempt the anxious. Some swear that wearing a badge from a holy church protects travellers from thieves, fever, and bad lodging. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether it protects against market tolls, though many would consider that the greater miracle. You move through the street slowly, while people turn to stare. At first, the staring feels almost gentle. Women lean from upper windows, children are pulled back by their sleeves, though the smallest manage to peer around elbows. Old men bow with hands folded. Shopkeepers straighten. A baker with flour on his beard lowers his head so quickly that a white puff rises from him like a little cloud. You smell smoked fish, donkey sweat, hot bread, damp rope, and the sea somewhere beyond the roofs. The city is rougher than the palace, but more alive, and its noise presses against you like weather. Then the cheers begin. They ripple along the street, uncertain at first, then swelling as people learn what others are doing. A chant forms around your title. It feels warm for 3 breaths. Then you hear a different shout from farther back, not quite hostile, not quite playful. Someone calls the name of a racing faction. Someone else answers with the rival colour, blue, green. The words snap over the crowd like banners in wind. The hippodrome rises ahead, enormous and restless. Its entrances swallow streams of people, craftsmen in wool caps, sailors with cracked hands, soldiers off duty, monks pretending they came for moral observation, women with baskets, boys selling nuts, men already arguing over horses they do not own. The walls carry old stains of smoke and weather. The air itself seems excited, which is never a peaceful quality in architecture. Inside, the sound deepens. You are led to the imperial viewing place, where screens, guards, curtains, and polished rails create a careful island above the crowd. From here, the track stretches long and pale, marked by turning posts and monuments that have seen more shouting than most battlefields. Horses stamp below, tossing their heads, breath steaming faintly in the cool air. Charioteers prepare in their colours, wrapped tight and narrow, looking less like men than decisions made at high speed. The crowd roars when the emperor appears. You stand near enough to be seen, far enough to be arranged. Your face must be calm, your hands must be still, your veil must not slip. The senior woman behind you murmurs that you should lower your chin slightly when the people cheer. Not too much. Too much humility looks false. Too little looks proud. There is, apparently, even a correct angle for being adored. The races begin. The gates open, and the horses surge forward. Wheels bite the track. Dust leaps. The crowd becomes one creature with many mouths. For a little while, you forget the danger and simply watch. The chariots swing around the turn with terrifying grace. The horses strain, shining with sweat. Men throw their arms up, shout, curse, laugh, pray, and spill cups of cheap wine onto their neighbours. In villages, people race geese, wrestle at fairs, throw stones at targets, and argue over whose mule is secretly noble. Here, the same human hunger for contest has been dressed in imperial scale and given enough seats to become politics. A green chariot takes the lead. Half the hippodrome erupts. The other half groans as if personally betrayed by heaven. A man somewhere below makes a gesture that causes a nearby monk to look both offended and interested. Banners flap, insults cross the track. Some swear certain charioteers carry charms sewn into their belts' horsehair knots, saints' names, bits of wax from chapel candles, or tiny curse tablets scratched against rivals. Even now, it is hard to tell whether victory comes from skill, fortune, prayer, or bribing the right groom. Then the cheering shifts. You feel it before you understand it. The sound gathers a harder edge near one side of the stands. A chant begins, not for a horse, not for a colour, but for bread prices. Another voice names a tax official. Another shouts about soldiers unpaid. The words scatter, then join. The emperor's face remains still. The officials behind him grow quieter. The old pale-eyed courtier from the dining hall leans toward another man and says something behind his hand. You look out over the crowd and see how quickly love can become hunger speaking loudly. The people who cheer your veil may curse your household by sunset if grain fails, if rumours grow, if a monk preaches against luxury, if a faction decides anger needs a face. Smoke rises from a brazier below and drifts across the stands, blurring banners, horses, officials, and mouths opened in praise or complaint. For one strange moment, the hippodrome looks like a chapel of noise, and the crowd its congregation. The race ends. You are told to smile. You do. The winning charioteer lifts his arms. The crowd roars again, partly joy, partly fury, partly habit. You stand above them in silk, perfumed and guarded, while the smoke crosses your face and the bells from some distant church begin to sound through the shouting. And you understand that public love is not shelter. It is weather over dry thatch, warm when it passes gently, deadly when it catches fire. The shouting of the hippodrome does not leave you when you are led away. It follows in pieces a cheer caught beneath an arch, a chant thinning behind palace walls, the crack of wheels still turning somewhere inside your chest. Your veil smells faintly of dust and horse sweat beneath the perfume, and when you pass back through the guarded corridors, the mosaics seem quieter than before, as if even the golden saints have heard the crowd change its voice and chosen not to comment. By late afternoon, the sky lowers over Constantinople, grey and damp, with a wind sliding in from the water. The emperor's officials confer in rooms you do not enter. The senior woman tells you that a short visit has been arranged to a monastery guest house near the palace quarter, partly for devotion, partly for rest, and partly, though no one says this plainly, because after the hippodrome, it is useful for the people to see holiness walking where politics has been too loud. So you go. Your party moves through a side street slick with mud and old straw. Guards walk ahead. A priest carries a covered relic case. 2 attendants keep close to your sleeves. A servant bears your travel icon wrapped in linen, as if the little painted saint is now an official member of the household. Near a wall, beside a heap of broken baskets, you glimpse the yellow-eyed dog again. It watches you with solemn disapproval, then trots after the procession at a distance. Some swear that a dog following a noblewoman means protection, others say it means rain. No one can quite agree, though the clouds seem to be voting for the second answer. The monastery gate is smaller than the palace doors, but it feels older in a different way, worn by hands rather than ceremony. An iron bell hangs beneath a wooden beam. A lay brother pulls the rope, and the sound is modest, cracked, and strangely comforting after the roar of the racecourse. You duck beneath the arch into a courtyard where rainwater gathers between flat stones. There are herb beds along one wall, bare vines twisted against a trellis, a well with a damp rope, and a little shrine tucked beneath a painted board showing a saint with a patient face and improbable eyebrows. The guest house smells of smoke, lentils, wet wool, and ink. Inside, the floor is strewn with rushes not as fresh as the palace ones, but honest enough. A fire burns low in a hearth blackened by many winters. Wooden benches line the walls. Pilgrims sit under coarse blankets, warming their hands around cups of thin ale. One has a scallop-shaped badge sewn to his hat. Another carries a staff carved with little crosses. A merchant's widow dozes upright beside a basket tied with cord. In a corner, a boy turns a spit with the tragic expression of someone discovering that poultry rotates slowly and destiny is boring. You're given a place near the fire, screened but not hidden. The fur at your collar begins to steam gently. A monk brings warm water for your hands, then bread, olives, and a bowl of lentil pottage. It is plain, thick, and blessed with enough garlic to wake a minor saint. After the silver anxieties of the imperial table, the wooden bowl feels almost merciful. You eat slowly, listening to the rain begin again on the roof. The monk who gave you the knotted bead appears near the hearth. In this dimmer light, he looks even thinner, as if fasting has been sketching him with a dry brush. His eyebrows remain deeply committed to sorrow. He bows, and the senior woman allows him to speak because he carries the dangerous combination of humility, reputation, and information. He asks whether the bead rests near your skin. You say it does. He nods, satisfied, as if a small knot of thread may hold back half the empire if properly blessed. He tells you the monastery has copied a sermon for your household. Then he gestures toward the scriptorium, and because the rain is steady and your public duties are briefly slowed, you're led through a low doorway into a room smelling of parchment, glue, lamp smoke, and scraped skins. 3 scribes sit at slanted desks, their fingers stained black, their backs bent in the noble medieval tradition of ruining one's spine for learning. Reed pens scratch softly. A boy warms a little knife near a lamp to trim mistakes from parchment. Another grinds pigment in a shell, making blue from costly powder while wearing a tunic patched at both elbows. Luxury and poverty sit very close together when books are made. One scribe copies the life of a saint who once, according to the margin note, cured a fever by appearing in a dream and striking the patient lightly with a staff. Another copies a list of donations from noble families. A third writes letters for men who have better seals than handwriting. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether scribes preserve truth, improve it, or simply give rumours nicer clothing. You watch the dark lines grow across the page and feel, with a small chill, how easily a life can become ink in another person's hand. The monk speaks quietly of signs. He says that last night a brother dreamed of a woman in purple standing beside a dry fountain, while ravens circled above the city walls. Another brother says the fountain was not dry, only frozen. A third insists there were no ravens, only black sails on the sea. No one can quite agree whether the dream promises blessing, warns of hunger, or means the brothers should eat less onion before bed. Yet dreams written down in monasteries can travel farther than common sense. By morning, a symbol may become a prophecy. By evening, prophecy may become accusation. You stand near a shelf of relic boxes, each labelled in careful script. A splinter of this, a thread from that. A bone said to belong to a martyr whose courage improves with every retelling. The priest from your party bows before them. The pale-eyed official from the dining hall, who somehow joined the visit without appearing to arrive, studies the labels with polite interest. His presence makes the room colder. The monk lowers his voice further. He says saints bless rulers who protect the poor, feed the hungry, honour widows, and keep pride from the throne. He does not look at the official when he says pride. This may be courage. It may be foolishness. In monasteries, the two often share a cloak. You feel the senior woman stiffen behind you. The monk then adds that holy women have steadied empires before, through prayer, alms, and mercy, a soft blessing. Then, but blessings have edges. If a holy woman may steady an empire, she may also be blamed when it shakes. Outside, rain taps the shutters. The bells mark another hour. The yellow-eyed dog barks once in the courtyard, perhaps at a rat, perhaps at theology. You return to the guest-house hearth and wrap your hands around a cup of warm ale. Pilgrims murmur nearby. A lay brother sprinkles herbs onto the rushes to sweeten the damp. The monk's warning settles beside you like smoke. In the palace, silk watches. In the hippodrome, crowds judge. Here, among saints, scribes, relics, and dreams, judgment wears a gentler face, but it reaches just as far. By the time you rise to leave, the pottage bowl is empty, the fire has sunk low, and your travel icon has been set beside the monastery's relic case for a short blessing. Candlelight trembles over wood, silver, and ink. You step back into the wet courtyard, guarded and veiled, with the bead at your wrist and prophecy clinging to your cloak like rain, and you understand that holiness is not an escape from power. In this city, it is one of power's oldest roads. The rain has thinned to mist by the time you leave the monastery gate, but the city has not softened with it. Constantinople steams under the low evening sky, every roof, awning, cloak, and market plank giving off the smell of wet wood, damp wool, fish scales, donkey hide, old smoke, and bread that has been baked too early and sold too late. The monastery bell fades behind you, cracked and modest, while farther off the palace, bells answer with smoother bronze, as if even metal knows the difference between prayer and authority. You walk beneath your canopy, guarded, veiled, and still warmed by the monastery's lentil pottage. The monk's warning lingers in your sleeve beside the knotted bead. Saints bless rulers who feed the hungry. The words seem simple enough beside a hearth. In the street, they become heavier. A market square opens ahead, crowded despite the weather. Merchants stand under patched cloth awnings, their tables loaded with onions, leeks, dried figs, coarse bread, salted fish, jars of oil, cheap clay cups, bundles of firewood, and strips of smoked meat hanging like dark little banners. A woman with red cheeks argues over the price of beans. A boy carries a basket of turnips nearly as large as himself. A fish seller slaps his palm on a tray and swears by 3 saints that the fish were swimming at dawn, though their eyes suggest they had begun doubting life much earlier. At the square's edge, a tax collector sits beneath a wooden shelter with tablets, cords, seals, and a face designed by Winter. Men and women approach him one by one to pay tolls on goods brought through the gate. A merchant grumbles that the road washed out near a bridge, that his mule went lame, that half his onions froze, and that the toll remains unchanged because misery, unlike onions, is not accepted as payment. No one can quite agree whether tax collectors are necessary servants of the empire or proof that demons enjoy paperwork, but everyone agrees they count very well. Your party slows because a cart has become stuck in a rut, its wheels sunk deep in mud. The sight pulls your mind back to the cracked wheel outside the palace gate, the yellow-eyed dog watching with solemn judgment. Here, 2 men strain at the cart handles while a third places stones under the wheel. A soldier laughs, then helps, because even a soldier may recognize that mud outranks everyone. The wheel lurches free with a wet sucking sound, and the crowd gives a small cheer. The sort of cheer people offer when a daily inconvenience briefly loses a battle. You notice the soldiers more now. They move through the market in pairs, cloaks dark with rain, belts heavy, boots stained to the knee. Some look young, with cheeks still soft. Others have eyes like old iron. They buy bread, onions, cheap wine, a twist of dried herbs to keep in a pouch against fever or foul air. Some swear that carrying wormwood near the heart keeps fleas away and courage close, though the soldiers seem unconvinced on both counts. One counts coins in his palm and frowns. Another asks a baker whether the price was lower last week. The baker replies that flour does not care about last week. Beyond the stalls, beggars gather near the church steps, drawn by evening alms. A blind man taps a bowl. A widow holds a child wrapped in patched wool. An old sailor displays a stiff hand ruined by cold or rope or both. A monk from another house moves among them with a basket of bread scraps, murmuring blessings. The scraps vanish quickly. Hunger is quiet at first, then not. You're told to distribute coins. A servant places a small purse in your hand. It is heavier than you expect, and for a moment the weight feels comforting. Something useful, at last. You step closer beneath the eyes of guards, merchants, priests, and the poor. The first coin falls into a bowl with a bright sound, the second into a palm, the third to a woman who bows so low her wet veil nearly touches the mud. You want to give more. You're not sure whether wanting matters. The senior woman murmurs that measure is important. Too little seems cold. Too much seems theatrical. Almsgiving, like eating and praying and smiling at the hippodrome, must find its proper angle. You give until the purse lightens, watched by people who need bread, and by people who will later discuss how you gave it. A little girl offers you a pilgrim badge in return, a cheap tin saint with a bent edge. Her mother pulls her back at once, horrified, but you accept it gently. The badge is cold, badly stamped, and lovely in its crooked way. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether a saint's image must be finely made to be powerful, but you suspect heaven has seen worse craftsmanship from kings. The square smells of boiling cabbage now. A cookshop has set a pot over coals beneath an awning, stirring pottage thickened with barley and whatever vegetables survived the morning. Men stand in line with wooden bowls. A woman tears coarse bread into pieces for 2 children who watch the pot with the pure devotion usually reserved for relics. Nearby, a merchant in a fur cap complains of tariffs on silk, pepper, wax, and wine. He speaks as if trade itself has been personally insulted. Yet behind him a porter coughs into his sleeve and keeps lifting crates because hunger does not pause for economic philosophy. You look back toward the palace hill. From here, through mist and roof smoke, its domes and walls seem pale, almost floating. Gold glints faintly where late light touches a high surface. It is beautiful from a distance, as cold stars are beautiful. But here in the mud, among market tolls, cracked bowls, wet boots, soldiers counting coins, and children measuring supper by smell, that splendour feels brittle. A thing may shine because it is strong, it may also shine because it is thin. The pale-eyed official appears again near the tax shelter, speaking with a man who holds a ledger wrapped in waxed cloth. He sees you watching and bows. His smile is respectful. Your skin tightens beneath the veil. Even among onions and fish guts, the palace follows. A bell rings for evening prayer. Stalls begin to close. Merchants cover goods with cloth. A woman sprinkles salt across her threshold, muttering that it keeps quarrels from entering with the damp. Even now, it is hard to tell whether the salt guards the doorway or merely gives the household something to believe in before another cold night. The yellow-eyed dog suddenly slips from between two carts, snatches a dropped crust, and trots away like a small criminal favoured by Providence. You almost smile. Then a shout rises at the far end of the square, not anger this time, only a baker calling final loaves. People turn toward the sound. Hands search purses. The winter evening lowers. Smoke thickens over roofs. Your guards begin guiding you back toward the palace, away from the market's warmth and want, away from the poor pressing bread beneath their cloaks, away from the soldier still counting coins under his breath. As you climb the slick street, the tin pilgrim badge rests hidden in your palm. It is worth almost nothing. It feels more honest than gold. Behind you, the market settles into darkness. Ahead, the palace waits with lamps, silk, polished dishes, and careful prayers. And you understand, with the damp city breathing at your back, that an empress may wear jewels bright enough to dazzle a crowd, yet still stand upon a foundation of hungry households, unpaid soldiers, market tolls, and winter bread cut thinner every day. The palace receives you back with lamps already burning, as if daylight has never been fully trusted inside these walls. Behind you, the market sinks into mist, cabbage steam, closing shutters, and the thin bark of the yellow-eyed dog defending its stolen crust from the larger opinions of other dogs. Ahead, bronze doors open, rushes soften your steps, and warm air scented with beeswax, vinegar, old stone. An expensive perfume folds around you with the practiced calm of a hand closing over a coin. The tin pilgrim badge remains hidden in your palm. It is bent, poorly stamped, and colder than it ought to be. You should hand it to an attendant. You should let it be placed among approved devotional objects, wrapped, labelled, and made harmless by procedure. Instead, you close your fingers around it beneath your sleeve, beside the monk's knotted bead, a saint in tin, a bead on thread, and a woman in silk. This, perhaps, is now your army. You're not taken at once to supper. A message has arrived, the senior woman says. Several messages, in fact. Her voice is calm, but her needle has not appeared in her hands, and without embroidery she looks more dangerous. You follow her through a side passage where the rushes are older and the walls less jewelled. Here the palace shows its working bone servants carrying folded cloth, a boy with soot on his cheek hauling a basket of spent candle ends, a tired woman balancing a tray of ink pots as carefully as if each one contains a sleeping snake. The room you enter is narrow, warm, and full of scratching. Secretaries sit at desks beneath hanging lamps, bent over parchment, wax tablets, loose scraps, sealed packets, and little knives used to scrape away mistakes. Their fingers are stained black and brown. One has ink on his sleeve, another on the edge of his nose, which gives him the look of a man slowly being conquered by his own profession. The air smells of lamp oil, parchment, wax, dust, and the metallic tang of ink. In one corner, a brazier holds coals under a small pan to soften sealing wax. Beside it lie cords, lead seals, silk threads, and rings pressed into clay or wax so that words may travel with authority stitched to their throats. You sit near a low table. Your public mantle is unfastened, but not removed. Nothing in this room is casual enough for comfort. A servant brings watered wine, bread, and a little dish of olives. No one eats. The food waits politely, like a witness. The chamberlain with the ivory staff stands by the door. The pale-eyed official sits near the chief secretary, and seeing him here feels like finding damp inside a locked chest. He bows to you with grave respect. You answer with a correct stillness. A packet is placed before you. The seal is broken in your presence, though you suspect many eyes have already weighed it. A secretary unfolds the letter and reads aloud. It comes from a noble household beyond the city, full of loyalty, devotion, prayers for your health, compliments to your family, and a sentence so carefully shaped that everyone in the room hears the blade inside it. A cousin of yours has apparently spoken unwisely at a provincial feast, or perhaps he has been accused of speaking unwisely. No one can quite agree whether the original words were treason, wine, or a jealous neighbour's embroidery. Yet here they are now, dried into ink and carried through gates. The pale-eyed official asks whether you know this cousin well. You say you remember him as a pious man devoted to his household and the emperor's peace. This may be true, it may not. It is also the safest version available before supper. Another letter concerns a marriage proposal. Not yours, of course. You are already wrapped into the imperial knot. This concerns a younger relative, a girl whose hand may smooth an old quarrel between families or sharpen it, depending on dowry, timing, and who feels insulted by the seating at the betrothal feast. The secretary reads phrases about affection, alliance, and shared honour. You hear instead land, soldiers, inheritance, suspicion. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether noble marriages are bridges, cages, or decorated ropes thrown across dangerous water. You suspect they are often all three, with flowers tied around the knots. A third packet is sealed in darker wax. It is said to come from a border governor. The chamberlain lowers his eyes as it is opened. The words mention complaints, missing funds, men sworn to one household but seen in another's company, and a rumour of forged orders sent under an old seal. The chief secretary explains that seals are guarded like relics, but old impressions can be copied by clever hands. Some swear that a forged letter carries a faint curse because it steals not only words but the soul of command. Even now, it is hard to tell whether that is holy warning or the complaint of honest clerks who dislike competition. You look at the rows of seals on the table. Wax remembers touch. Parchment remembers pressure. Ink remembers hesitation. A letter seems so light when folded, yet it can move guards, empty treasuries, arrange marriages, condemn servants, summon relatives, bless monasteries, poison reputations, and reach farther than a shouted accusation ever could. In the market, hunger has a smell. In this room, danger has handwriting. The senior woman leans close enough that only you hear her. She says a reply must be gracious, firm, and empty where emptiness protects you. This is apparently a respected court style. You dictate slowly while the secretary writes. You express gratitude. You praise loyalty. You advise patience. You request clarification. You promise prayers. You commit to nothing that can grow teeth. The secretary's pen scratches softly. A mouse rustles somewhere in the rushes near the wall. No one reacts, which tells you mice have better access to the palace than many petitioners. The old joke among servants, one attendant once whispered, is that mice know every secret first but cannot hold a pen, which is the only reason they have not yet governed. Wax is melted. The reply is folded. Thread wraps it tightly. A seal is pressed down, lifted, inspected, and approved. Then another, then another. Your words vanish into packets, and the packets become actions waiting for feet. Night deepens beyond the shutters, somewhere far off. A bell marks the hour for monks, bakers, guards, and the poor settling beneath wool and patched cloaks. Here, in the narrow room, lamps burn lower, ink shines wetly, and every shadow seems to bend toward the desks. You think of the market woman sprinkling salt across her threshold to keep quarrels out. The palace has thresholds of bronze, guards with spears, priests with relics, and still quarrels enter easily enough. Folded small beneath wax. At last you're allowed to stand. Your legs ache from stillness. The pilgrim badge has warmed in your palm. The monk's bead presses near your wrist. Behind you, the secretaries continue scratching, because the empire does not sleep simply because bodies do. As you leave the room, you hear one clerk sand a page to dry the ink, a soft whispering sound like wind over ash. You walk back through the dim corridor, surrounded by attendants, followed by messages you have not written and consequences you cannot yet see. And you understand that in the palace, power does not always arrive with trumpets or swords. Sometimes it comes quietly at night, in a folded letter, under a seal, creeping through the walls like a mouse in the rushes. Sleep comes late and leaves early. The letters follow you into dreams, folded under wax, creeping through rushes with tiny feet. When the bells wake the palace before dawn, you open your eyes to the grey edge of morning and the last glow of coals in the brazier. A servant has set a fresh taper beside your travel icon, and the painted saint gazes at you with the patient expression of someone who has watched empires make poor choices before breakfast. The room smells of wool blankets, cold ash, and the faint sweetness of yesterday's perfume trapped in your veil. Rain has stopped, but the city beyond the shutters still exhales dampness. You hear footsteps in the passage sooner than usual, not the soft household rhythm of basins and bread, but a quicker, harder movement. Men are awake, more than one. The palace does not need to shout to sound afraid. A message has come from the Eastern Road. That is all you're told at first. You dress while the women speak in half sentences. A sleeve is pinned, a belt tightened, a mantle set over your shoulders. The monk's bead is hidden at your wrist, the bent pilgrim badge tucked into a small linen pouch near your breast. You know both are poor defences against armies, yet people have carried stranger comforts into worse mornings. Some swear that iron sewn into a hem keeps fear from entering the bones. No one can quite agree whether it works. But by the looks of the attendants today, every hem in the palace may soon be reinforced. You are led not to the chapel, but toward a council chamber near the inner court. The corridor feels colder than before. Lamps burn low, though dawn is gathering. Servants stand aside with baskets, trays, and folded cloth, pretending not to listen while listening with their whole bodies. Near one doorway, a boy drops a bundle of fresh rushes, and the green stems scatter across the marble. No one scolds him. That frightens you more than scolding would have. Inside the council chamber, maps lie across a long table. They are not like the maps in stories, clean and certain, with dragons politely waiting in the margins. These are rubbed, patched, and weighted at the corners with knives, cups, and a small reliquary whose contents no one mentions. Roads twist like dark threads. Rivers curl through hills. Fortresses are marked by little towers of ink. A secretary stands ready with a pen. 2 generals speak in low voices. The emperor listens with the hand resting beside a cup he has not touched. The pale-eyed official is there too. Of course he is. He bows when you enter, and for once his smile is absent. This makes him no easier to like. A messenger kneels near the table, mud dried up to his knees, cloak stiff with travel, eyes red from wind and sleeplessness. His boots leave flakes of road on the floor. One spur is bent. He smells of horse sweat, wet leather, smoke, and cold fields. Compared with the polished courtiers, he seems almost honest, which in this room gives him the air of a dangerous foreign object. The news is uncertain. A border town has closed its gates, or has been told to close them, or has refused to open them to imperial officers. A commander has not sent his usual oath by the proper feast day. Men have been seen gathering near a river crossing. A storehouse has burned, though no one can quite agree whether it was rebellion, accident, lightning, or a cook with heroic incompetence. Somewhere beyond the city, soldiers are moving, and here, beneath the lamps, the palace attempts to turn rumour into decisions. You stand behind a carved chair, not seated, not dismissed. War, you discover, enters the palace as mud on a messenger's boots, as silence around a map, as a servant holding breath beside a door. It does not yet look like battle. It looks like ink. Bread counted twice, horses demanded from farms, soldiers unpaid, winter grain requisitioned, mothers watching roads, and old men remembering earlier disasters with the irritating confidence of people who survived them. A general with a scar along his jaw points to the eastern road. He speaks of passes, weather, forage, river levels, and men whose loyalty depends on pay arriving before hunger does. Another argues for patience. A third insists that delay will be read as weakness. The emperor asks about the fleet. Someone mentions repairs. Someone else mentions timber. A secretary writes quickly, his pen scratching like dry grass. You think of the market square soldiers counting coins, bakers raising prices, beggars near the church steps. The city beneath the palace has already been part of this war before anyone named it. Then the question turns toward households. Which noble families can be trusted? Which marriages bind which men? Which cousin spoke unwisely? Which governor holds a seal that may or may not have been copied? The letter room returns to you, warm and narrow, full of wax and mice. You realize the folded letters were not separate from this morning. They were its roots. The pale-eyed official says your family name gently. A cup could not break more loudly. He suggests, with grave courtesy, that your kin may soothe certain provincial houses if approached in the proper tone, or alarm them, or be used by them. He does not say hostage. He does not say scapegoat. Palace language is a fine cloth thrown over hard furniture. The emperor looks toward you. Your mouth is dry, but your face remains still. You say your family prays for the peace of the empire and will serve lawful order. It is a sentence built like a stone wall plain, cold and offering no easy window. The senior woman would approve. Perhaps the suspicious monk would not. Saints, you suspect, prefer speech with fewer escape passages. A prisoner is brought in later, not into the full chamber, but to an adjoining space where you glimpse him through a half-open screen. He is a courier, accused of carrying letters between disloyal men. His hands are bound, but he is not blooded, and he looks more exhausted than villainous. A priest murmurs beside him. The man swears on a relic that he carried only what he was paid to carry. Some swear that an oath over a saint's bone burns the tongue of a liar, even now. It is hard to tell whether fear of the bone or fear of the guards makes men tremble more. You turn away before his eyes find yours. The council continues. Orders are drafted. Riders are summoned. Storehouses are inventoried. A command is sent for additional candles and oil, because even crisis requires light, and because an empire at war apparently burns through wax like a monastery with insomnia. Servants bring bread, cheese, olives, and watered wine. The men eat without tasting. Crumbs fall on the edge of the map, and a secretary brushes them away before they can become new provinces. Outside, bells mark mid-morning. The sound passes over walls, markets, monasteries, kitchens, stables, and muddy roads where other messengers are already riding. Perhaps one passes the place where your cartwheel cracked. Perhaps the yellow-eyed dog is asleep beneath some awning, dreaming of stolen crusts and better governments. Perhaps your family, far from this room, is still at breakfast, unaware that their name has just been set like a marker on the emperor's table. By noon, the first orders leave under seal. You watch the packets carried away by men with cloaks thrown over their shoulders, boots ready for mud, faces set against wind. The doors close behind them. The chamber remains warm, lamplit, and full of maps. Yet your fate has begun moving beyond it, out along roads you cannot see, through villages, passes, ferries, shrines, and winter fields. And you understand, with a tired stillness settling in your bones, that an empress may live behind bronze doors, but the empire can reach her from every road. Armies do not ask whether she has slept. Generals do not wait for her courage to ripen. Oaths made in cold churches, letters hidden in saddlebags, and men riding through rain may decide whether she remains crowned, confined, praised, blamed, or remembered only in whispers after the candles burn down. By the time the council chamber releases you, the palace seems to have grown more corridors while you were not looking. The maps, seals, mud-stained messenger, and low voices remain behind, but their weight follows you beneath the painted arches, through curtains that stir in the draught, past lamps that burn with little golden hearts inside glass cups. Orders have gone out onto roads you cannot see. Men you will never meet are tightening saddle straps, counting arrows, checking bridges, arguing with ferrymen, and cursing weather that has no respect for imperial timing. You're led back toward the women's chambers, where the air is warmer, sweeter, and somehow not safer. The first thing you smell is perfume. Not the chapel incense, not the honest garlic of monastery pottage, not the market's fish and mud truth, but layered fragrance rose oil, myrrh, crushed violets, warm wax, hair powder, sweet resin, and the faint bitterness of herbs drying near a brazier. It floats in the room like a jewelled veil. It is beautiful. It is also too much. Perfume in a palace is not only pleasure, it is cover. It softens fear, disguises sickness, sweetens rooms where women wait for news, and sometimes hides what no one wishes to name. The senior woman receives you beside a low table. Her embroidery lies nearby, but again her needle is still. This is now one of your private weather signs. When her needle rests, storms are thinking. Several gifts have arrived. They wait on the table, each wrapped, sealed, folded, or displayed with careful intention. A little ivory comb carved with vines, a box of face powder made from pale ground minerals and scented with rose, a narrow bottle of oil for the hair, a silk veil from a noble household whose loyalty has lately become a subject of ink, a dish of candied quince sent from a courtier's wife, a packet of dried herbs tied with red thread, a small painted icon, not your travel one, showing a saint with one hand raised in blessing and the other hand holding a book with letters too tiny to accuse anyone clearly. You stand before them, still wearing the council's cold in your bones. No one touches the gifts at first. That is important. In common houses, a gift may be opened with delight, suspicion, or the immediate question of whether it can be eaten before Lent. Here, it must be inspected like a border fortress. The seals are studied, the wax is sniffed, the cords are examined. The servant who carried them is questioned gently enough to remain polite, and firmly enough to ruin his afternoon. A food taster is summoned for the candied quince. He's a broad man with tired eyes and a face that suggests he has long ago stopped enjoying surprises. He bows, takes a small piece, chews, waits, and stares at a point on the wall as if listening for disaster inside his own stomach. Some swear that certain poisons announce themselves with heat beneath the tongue, others with numb lips, others with a sweetness too smooth to trust. No one can quite agree, which is not comforting at all. The taster swallows. The room watches him breathe. Nothing happens. After a time, the senior woman nods. The dish is accepted, but not offered to you. It will wait. Perhaps until tomorrow, perhaps forever. Palace cupboards must be full of perfectly good treats defeated by caution, which feels like one of civilization's quieter tragedies. The cosmetic box is opened next. A lady with careful fingers lifts the lid and shows powder pale as winter flower. She says it will brighten the face after sleepless nights, soften the skin, and give a holy fairness suitable for public devotion. Another woman murmurs that too much white powder makes a face look like an anxious candle. A third says nothing, but her mouth twitches. Even now, it is hard to tell whether court beauty is meant to honour God, impress men, frighten rivals, or conceal the fact that no one has slept properly since the last rebellion. You sit while they test a little of the powder on cloth. Beside it are cosmetics made from rose, almond oil, and a red tint from plant root. In a village, women may rub cheeks with cold hands, wash in rainwater, tie hair with wool cord, and still be told by some grandmother that beauty depends on keeping one's liver warm and one's temper cooler. Here, beauty arrives in boxes and jars, guarded by women who know that a face is a message. Too pale, and you seem ill. Too bright, and you seem vain. Too tired, and enemies rejoice. Too serene, and enemies wonder what you know. The herb packet draws the midwife. She enters with her strong wrists and linen coif, smelling of fennel and smoke, and unties the red thread. Inside are rue, sage, dried mint, and a few leaves she does not immediately name. That silence changes the room. She lifts them, crushes one between her fingers, smells it, then hands it to a physician's assistant waiting near the door. The assistant looks young enough to still believe medicine can be organized. He frowns very seriously, which is what young men do when herbs refuse to introduce themselves. The midwife says the packet may be harmless. Maybe. The word lands softly and stays. Those who tell the tale never fully agree on which herbs comfort the womb, which calm the stomach, which drive away fever, and which should be kept far from any woman the empire expects to bear an heir. A remedy in one hand may be a threat in another. A charm tied with red thread may be protection, insult, warning, or merely a provincial aunt trying to be helpful with terrifying confidence. You touch the monk's bead beneath your sleeve. The senior woman notices. Of course she does. Her eyes flicker to your wrist, then away. She says only that trusted objects are best kept close. It is the nearest thing to tenderness she is offered all day. Visitors arrive before evening. Not many, never too many at once, but enough to make the chamber feel staged. A general's wife with smooth cheeks and sharp eyes brings embroidered cloth for an altar. A cousin of a bishop sends greetings through a veiled attendant. A noblewoman praises your grace at the hippodrome and then asks, with the innocence of a cat beside spilled cream, whether the crowd seem troubled to you. You answer gently. You say the people are passionate, and passion, guided by faith and imperial care, may become loyalty. It is an answer full of cushions. No one can fall hard on it. The pale-eyed official's sister comes last. She is elegant, scented with violets, and smiling as if she has never once overheard a dangerous thing in her life. She presents the ivory comb. Its teeth are smooth, its carved vines delicate. Some swear that a gifted comb can bind friendship, while others warn that hair carries part of the soul and should never be trusted to strangers. No one can quite agree, but every woman in the room looks at the comb as if it has teeth in more ways than one. You thank her. You do not use it. Outside, evening bells begin. Servants light candles. Wax softens in little golden pools. Supper is brought bread, cheese, leeks in oil, olives, and warm pottage. This, too, is tasted. The wine is tasted. Even the honey is touched first by another mouth. You eat because you must, and because hunger still belongs to the body even when trust has been chased from the room. Night gathers against the shutters. The gifts assorted accepted, blessed, stored, questioned, watched. Your travel icon stands beside the strange new saint. The bent pilgrim badge rests hidden in linen. The knotted bead warms at your wrist. Around you, women embroider, whisper, grind herbs, fold veils, and smile with their eyes half-guarded. And you understand, as perfume thickens over candle smoke, that danger here does not always enter with soldiers or sealed orders. Sometimes it comes wrapped in silk, sweetened with quince, carved into ivory, stirred into powder, or carried by a smiling visitor whose kiss brushes the air beside your cheek and leaves you wondering which is rarer in this palace poison, or trust. The night after the gifts does not truly end. It only thins into a paler kind of unease. You lie beneath wool blankets while candles gutter in their cups, and the perfume of rose, violet, and myrrh lingers so heavily in the chamber that even sleep seems scented and watched. Somewhere beyond the shutters, rain begins again, soft at first, then steadier, tapping on wood and stone like fingers asking to be let in. Before dawn, the bells sound wrong. Not louder or not faster, simply wrong in the way a familiar footstep sounds different when it pauses outside your door. You wake with your hand already closed around the monk's bead beneath your sleeve. The bent pilgrim badge rests in its linen pouch near your breast. Your travel icon glows dimly beside a fresh taper, the painted saint looking neither surprised nor especially helpful, which is perhaps the honest expression of most saints who have seen politics at close range. The door opens. The senior woman enters first. Behind her stand 2 eunuchs, a priest, and guards whose cloaks are dark with rain. No one carries a basin, no one brings rose water, no one asks how you slept. That is how you know. You're told you must travel. The words are gentle, arranged carefully, wrapped in concern, for your safety, for quiet, until matters are settled, until the Emperor's enemies stop using your name, until roads are clearer, letters answered, oaths renewed, factions calmed, saints consulted, and all the usual impossible things have been made obedient. No one says exile. The palace is very skilled at leaving the sharpest word outside the room. You dress without ceremony. There is no pearl band, no heavy court silk, no public mantle bright enough for crowds. Instead, they give you thick wool, a plain dark cloak lined with worn fur, travelling shoes, gloves, and a veil that hides more than it adorns. The senior woman fastens the cloak herself. Her hands are steady. Her face is unreadable. When she ties the cord at your throat, she pauses for half a breath, then tucks the monk's bead safely beneath the sleeve. "Trusted objects are best kept close," she murmurs, repeating her earlier kindness so softly that it almost vanishes. You take the travel icon. A servant begins to reach for it, but this time you lift it yourself. The small painted board is wrapped in linen and placed against your chest, beside the pilgrim badge. Tin saint, painted saint, knotted bead. A poor little court of protection. Some swear that 3 holy objects carried together confuse misfortune, because misfortune cannot decide which one to insult first. No one can quite agree whether this is theology or the wishful thinking of frightened travellers. But this morning you accept it as both. You leave by a side passage while the palace still pretends to sleep. The corridors are dim, the rushes damp near doorways, the bronze lamps burning low. A boy with a basket of candle ends sees you pass and lowers his eyes too quickly. A woman carrying folded linen turns into an alcove, though not before you see pity cross her face like candlelight over water. The half-hidden machinery of the palace continues around you. Keys turning, seals being warmed, letters being carried, fires being coaxed awake. Yesterday, all of it served your rank. Today, it serves your removal. At the outer court, rain falls hard. The broken cartwheel is gone, replaced by a covered wagon with plain sides and no imperial colours. Mud sucks at the boots of guards. Horses stamp and toss their heads, breath rising pale in the cold. The yellow-eyed dog appears beneath a dripping arch, thinner than ever and deeply offended by the weather. It looks at you, looks at the wagon, and sneezes. Even now, it is hard to tell whether dogs sense disgrace or simply dislike rain with excellent judgment. You climb into the wagon. The city gate opens before full morning. No cheering crowd gathers, no banners lift, no deacon chants beneath mosaics. A sleepy guard makes the sign of the cross. A priest mutters a travel blessing over the wheels, asking protection from thieves, fever, swollen rivers, bad inns, broken axles, and perhaps poor decisions made by men indoors. The list feels practical. Medieval prayers often know the road better than courtiers do. Then Constantinople begins to fall behind. You pass through streets where market sellers are still setting up under dripping awnings. A baker rakes embers from an oven. A woman lays coarse bread on a board and covers it against the rain. A fisherman curses a torn net. A child in a wool hood stares at your wagon until his mother pulls him away. No one knows whether you are honoured, hidden, guarded, punished, or all of these at once. Those who tell the tale never fully agree when a journey becomes exile. Sometimes it happens at the gate, sometimes at the first mile, sometimes only when you realise no one has told you when you may return. The road beyond the city is worse. It unrolls through wet fields, low orchards, and villages hunched beneath smoke. Wheels grind into mud. Guards ride close. Your plain cloak grows heavy with damp. At midday, you stop near a roadside shrine where a painted saint, faded by weather, stands beneath a little roof of cracked tiles. Travellers have left offerings: a bent nail, a strip of cloth, a small clay lamp, 2 coins green with age, and a bunch of dried herbs tied with blue thread. Some swear that leaving a nail at a shrine pins illness or sorrow to the holy place so it cannot follow. You look at the nail and wonder how many griefs a shrine can hold before even saints grow tired. You eat under an oak tree coarse bread, smoked fish, cheese, and watered ale from a leather flask. It is not a feast. It is easier to swallow than palace food. Rain drips from the branches. A guard shares crumbs with the yellow-eyed dog, which has somehow followed at distance and now accepts hospitality as if it had negotiated terms. By evening, you reach a ferry crossing. The river is swollen, brown and cold, carrying reeds, broken twigs, and the dull reflection of a low sky. The ferryman is a broad man in a patched cloak who looks at your guards, then at you, then decides not to ask questions. Wise man. His boat smells of tar, wet rope, fish, and old fear. Horses dislike the crossing. So do you. The wagon boards creak as the ferry pushes away from shore. Water slaps the side. A guard murmurs a charm under his breath against drowning. No one laughs. On the far bank, darkness gathers fast. You stop at an inn with a sagging roof, soot-black rafters, and rushes on the floor that have known too many boots. The room smells of ale, onions, damp hay, smoke, and tired strangers. A place is cleared for you near the hearth, not grandly, but carefully. You warm your hands over the fire while pottage bubbles in a pot and rain whispers against the shutters. The innkeeper's wife gives you a wool blanket without meeting your eyes. You are still guarded, still watched, still addressed with care. Yet something has shifted. The crown you do not wear tonight feels farther away than the muddy road outside. In the palace, you were a woman made dangerous by power. Here, by the hearth, wrapped in damp wool with a wooden bowl in your hands, you're becoming something else, a story people will lower their voices to tell, a name folded into letters, a memory moved away before it can catch fire. The dog settles near the door. The guards drink quietly. The river mutters in the dark beyond the inn yard. You hold the warm bowl and listen to rain, bells too distant to hear, and the soft crack of burning wood, understanding how quickly silk can become wool, ceremony can become mud, and a crowned woman can become a traveller no one is supposed to recognise. Morning comes to the inn as a grey seam along the shutters. The hearth has burned low, the rushes on the floor are damp at the edges, and someone's cloak steams on a peg with the sad dignity of a drowned banner. You wake beneath a wool blanket that smells of smoke, lanolin, and all the travellers who needed it before you. You listen to the room, a guard snoring, the innkeeper stirring embers under ash, the yellow-eyed dog scratching once near the door, then settling again as if exile is easier when one has no official title. No palace bell wakes you now, only the inn-yard hooves in mud, a bucket set down, a woman calling for hot water, a hen objecting to history beneath a cart. You eat coarse bread dipped in thin ale, because the road does not care how recently you were served from silver. A guard shares cheese with the dog. Even now, it is hard to tell whether the dog follows from loyalty, hunger, or a shrewd understanding that important people drop better scraps. By mid-morning, you are travelling again. The road leads away from the river into low hills, past bare orchards, winter fields, and villages where smoke rises from thatched roofs in slow blue ropes. Women carry water from wells. Near a manor boundary, a steward marks a fine on a wax tablet for wood cut without permission, though everyone clearly needed warmth. No one can quite agree whether justice is stronger when written down, but it certainly takes longer. Your wagon passes a roadside shrine where strips of cloth flutter from a thorn bush. Some swear that tying cloth there leaves sickness behind for the saint to untangle. The rags move in the cold wind like tiny faded prayers. You touch the linen pouch at your breast, where the pilgrim badge rests beside the wrapped icon. By afternoon, the convent appears on a slope above a narrow valley. It is not grand. Its walls are pale stone patched with darker repairs. A small bell tower rises above a chapel roof. Beyond the gate are a brown winter garden, a well with an iron handle, stacked firewood, and windows glowing faintly with candlelight. The place feels less like power than endurance. It has no mosaics, no roaring crowds, no polished officials, only stone, prayer, work, and the smell of pottage from a kitchen. The abbess meets you at the gate. She is older, square-shouldered, and wrapped in dark wool. Her face has the weathered calm of someone who has managed leaks, fevers, quarrels, novices, and stubborn goats, which may be better training for empire than half the palace council. She bows properly but not fearfully. You step down into mud, and she takes your hands between hers. Her palms are warm. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether a convent is a refuge, a prison, a school, a household, or a little kingdom of women with better bookkeeping. As the gate closes behind you, you suspect it can be all of these, depending on who holds the key and why. The dog slips in before the gate shuts, then sits under the eaves, satisfied with its own diplomacy. Inside, the guest room is small, an oak door, a narrow bed, a chest, a stool. A wool blanket folded at the foot, rushes on the stone floor, mixed with dried lavender and rosemary. A beeswax candle burns on a shelf beside a little cross. Through a shutter crack you hear the convent bell marking the hour, softer than the palace bells and less interested in frightening anyone. You unwrap your travel icon and set it beside the candle. The painted saint, after gates, markets, councils, rain, ferry, inn, and mud, looks at home in this plain room. You place the bent pilgrim badge nearby, then the monk's knotted bead. 3 small witnesses in the candlelight. The abbess brings warm water in a basin herself. You wash your hands. The water clouds with road dust. She gives you bread, cheese, and cabbage pottage, humble and hot. There is no taster, no pale-eyed official, no measured angle of the chin. You eat slowly while the wind presses at the shutters. Night settles gently. The convent moves around you with small, steady sounds, sandals on stone, a spoon against a pot, a latch closing, the chapel bell calling the women to prayer. You're given a plain wool veil for the evening office. In the chapel, candles shine before icons darkened by smoke. Voices rise, low and unhurried. You stand among women who have renounced the world, or been placed away from it, or chosen a different bargain with it. No one can quite agree whether you now belong among them. But for tonight, no one asks. Later, in your room, the candle burns lower, wax bends down the side in a quiet pale stream. The dog sleeps somewhere near the kitchen, having conquered the convent by existing near scraps. Your cloak hangs to dry. Your shoes rest by the door, crusted with mud from the road that carried you away from marble. You lie beneath the wool blanket and listen. The bell has faded. The wind has softened. The convent stones hold the day's last warmth close to their old bones. Somewhere in the dark, a sister turns a page. Somewhere farther off, the valley stream moves beneath bare branches. You breathe in lavender, wax, smoke, and clean wool, and the empire grows smaller with every breath. The crown is far away now, whether it waits for you or forgets you. The bronze doors are far away. The hippodrome's roar is only a dull shell of sound, sinking beneath rain and time. The market, the monastery hearth, the ink room, the purple nursery, the table of eyes, all of them loosen their hold, one by one, like knots in thread eased by patient fingers. You do not need to solve the empire tonight. You do not need to smile correctly, eat carefully, answer traps, read seals, measure arms, or look serene beneath jewels. You only need to rest in this small room while the candle lowers and the world outside folds itself into darkness. The saint on the shelf keeps its painted silence. The bent badge catches one last soft glint. The bead lies warm against your wrist, no stronger than thread, yet enough for a tired hand to hold. And slowly, very slowly, the terrible crown becomes no heavier than a dream remembered at the edge of sleep. The stone room grows dimmer. The fire in the distant kitchen settles. The wind moves once along the shutters. then passes on over the convent roof, over the bare garden, over the wet road, over fields where no one knows your name. Your breathing becomes quiet. Your hands uncurl. The candle flame leans, steadies, and shines softly in the hush. You are safe enough for this moment. You're warm enough for this night, and as the bells sleep in their tower, as the dog dreams near the ashes, as the valley darkens under a low and merciful sky, you let the last gold of candlelight fade behind your eyes, and you drift with it, down into stillness, down into softness, down into the deep, kind dark,